in this lesson, we'll create an effector that will turn on the letters as they come across the spline. So the letters currently exist on the spline all the time, and what we want to do is transition those on as the spline draws out. So what we're going to do is go ahead and to our cloner, which I've renamed Word Sweep Cloner just to keep it straight, I want to add another effector, and this time I want to add a plane effector. Plane effectors are good for modifying the scale or rotation. If something that is in the plane effector, you can move it through it and have the letters turn or twist. But what we're going to do is use it to scale them up. So let's go ahead and add a plane effector right here. So we'll check and make sure it's in here. So here's our plane effector. Now what we want to do is turn off position, and I want to turn on scale and change this to absolute uniform scale and leave that set to 0. The transform space I'm going to set to effector. And what I want to do is I want the effector to fall off using this spline. So we're going to go to fall off. Right now the shape is infinite, so I'm going to change this to source. And then I want to drop the spline in here, but I want to be able to not only have the spline shape, but also to change as and to kind of modulate the beginning and end of the spline, I guess. And so what I can do is use a mow spline to do that. So we'll go ahead and grab a mow spline, and here we go. All right, and we want to change this mode from simple. And simple will allow you to create a lot of different variations of splines with different curvatures. You can create some really cool kind of fractal-like or tree-like effects. But I'm going to change this to spline. So this will allow us, under the spline tab, to drop a sort of reference spline into the mow spline. And I'm going to use this same base spline as the source. Okay. Let me go ahead and turn off our words for now, so we can kind of see this. So now our mow spline is using the base spline, and what we can do now is actually take the start and end, and you can kind of see this little value up here. Okay, if we go ahead and increase the width, you can kind of see that. That's our mow spline. Okay, and so what it can do is we can draw out a spline interactively. So we've got an end and a start that we can modify, and we can key all these. So you can see if I take this end down to 0, there's no spline, and then as I draw it out, the spline is created along that path. Okay. All right, so what we want to do is use this mow spline as our fall off. So we'll go back into the plane effector. The fall off is set to source. Our source link is going to be this mow spline. So we'll go ahead and drop the mow spline in. Okay, let's go ahead and turn back on our letters. So right now the mow spline or the plane effector is using this mow spline as its fall off. So if we go back into the mow spline, take this down, and let's go ahead and take this out, and let's move up here. I want to go ahead and I want to increase the influence around this curve. So let's go in here and change the sample distance, and this is in the plane effector. I'm going to change this to something like 150. Okay, and so what's happening now is you can see wherever we have this mow spline drawn out, it's applying the parameters in the plane effector, so scaling this to 0, okay, which is okay. It's not exactly what we want, but we can at least see the effect here. So you can see as I take this down, it's decreasing that. If I increase it, it's taking it up. So it's basically doing the opposite. So one of the ways that we can really quickly switch this up is to go into our plane effector under fall off and turn on invert. So now what that'll do is invert the effect. So now wherever our mow spline is along this curve, that's where our letters are going to be. So if I go ahead and take this down to 0, you can see I don't have any letters here. And as I bring this up all the way, now the letters populate our spline. Okay, so what we can do now is match up the animation of our mow spline, and specifically this parameter here, with the sweep that gets drawn out. Okay, So if we go ahead and take a look at this, you can see that at, let's say at frame 4, I believe, I'm going to set this down to 0 and key it. Okay, and let's draw it out a little bit, or scrub through a little bit. So we'll scrub through till it gets to this side over here, and then we can increase this until the letters are right behind the spline here. So we'll go ahead and key that. And I'm keying it in sort of intervals just so I make sure that it stays with the end there. So now I'll come to this point, increase that mot spline until it gets right up next to that. Go ahead and key that. And as it comes, so I can see it here, as it comes right in here, I'll increase it a bit more, all the way up to the end. Okay, we can key that. And then as it goes through, we can go ahead and key the rest of it. All right. And then we can play through that. Now, if you're having trouble going in and playing this, you can also create a preview. So let's go ahead and check everything. I'll turn off the background letters, or turn on the background letters rather. And let's go ahead and check everything out. So I'm going to go in and go to Make Preview. And then I just want to do, let's just do a hardware preview. We'll do all frames and the size, we'll say OK. And we'll just leave it as an AVI. So we'll leave everything else as is. All right, so once your preview's done, it's going to bring up the picture viewer. And here's our preview.avi. You can see all the frames inside there. And so now it'll let you go in and play this back, and we just want to get an idea of the motion and the speed and everything. Okay, so it is doing what we want as far as drawing these out. You can see the letters get drawn out along with that spline. That's what we want. But I want there to be constant motion, so with all of these letters. So as soon as they're drawn out, I want them to continue to sort of expand and move. And so I also want to sort of key some other elements here. So let's go ahead and draw these out a little ways. So we'll just kind of key this out. And so let's go into our word sweep cloner. Okay. And actually, let me go into the word sweep random. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and key these values at, I don't know, frame 10 or so. And then I'm just going to come in here and let's actually go maybe 150. I'm just going to increase these amounts a little bit, just so it's sort of drifting a bit. And then key those again. Okay, and that might be a little too much. If you want to take that value down, I just want to keep it from being completely static. So I might want to take that back down to, stop it first. Maybe take that last key. There we go. Maybe down to 140 as far as the variation goes. And we'll change these as well. So it's up to you. I just want them to keep moving a little bit. And then, you know, you can go back in and do another preview. So we can go to render, make preview. We'll get the same options here. We'll say OK. Let it go in and calculate. So now you can see it listed with our first preview. Now I have this preview 1.avi. And so now you can see that those letters keep sort of moving. And you can decrease that a little bit if you want to. But I'd rather have them moving than being completely static. So I might take some of those values down, but you kind of get the idea. All right, so now that we've got those letters animating onto the screen, the next thing we want to do is create our main title text that's going to appear at the end from this sort of stream of letters. So we'll start that process in the next lesson.